Hello, welcome to another video on our channel. Here, we share stories from people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual encounters. Today, we will hear the story of Selma Harry. She recounts having an out-of-body experience during which she witnessed a nuclear incident that led people to migrate from Europe to South America. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, take this opportunity to do so now. Activate the notification bell to stay updated with each new video. Let's now listen to Selma's account. My name is Selma, but I write under the pseudonym Selma Harry. My life began to change significantly when I started having intense and profound astral projection experiences in early 2022. I am an anthroposophist, an interdisciplinary social scientist, and an educator. When these experiences began, I was quite confused because my background is strongly based on a scientific perspective. My first astral projection experience occurred while I was living in Hong Kong, after a brief trip through Southeast Asia. I had visited Vietnam, Cambodia, and mainland China. At that time, I didn't know that my attraction to these regions was linked to past lives in present-day China. I believe my experience began in Hong Kong because I was going through an extremely difficult period, feeling completely alone and a bit tired of traveling by myself. It was the first time since I started exploring other countries on my own at the age of 25 that I truly felt lonely. This happened when I was about 32 or 33 years old. There were circumstances that made this experience possible for me. And although there are always external factors that facilitate such events, I feel that there was also an energy shift that allowed the veil to fall for many of us, enabling these memories. I vividly remember my first astral projection experience. I went to bed and suddenly found myself in an astral city. I now know that this astral city is located in the same region where I was physically, but on the astral plane. According to my experiences, every city in the world has its counterpart in the astral field. I went to an astral city that seemed very Asian, consistent with the fact that I was in Hong Kong. But the most interesting part was that I entered an astral city closer to India. In this experience, I saw myself dressed as an Indian lady, with a long braid and a type of sari that seemed like an astral version of this traditional attire. I learned to understand and see many people on the other side, and I realized that many of them appeared alien, or extraterrestrial, as we call them here. However, most of the contacts I had during my astral projection experiences were with humans. People who looked very much like us, but came from other planets. One of these experiences I had was of flying or falling. I literally saw myself falling, flying into space, going down the rabbit hole, passing through a wormhole until I reached another planet, the stratosphere. It was one of the many experiences I had, and over time, I began to understand that through this experience, I could perceive that the entire planet has an outer layer, an astral layer. Many anthroposophists and people studying spiritual science today mention this as the fourth dimension, or dimensions that quantum physics now addresses under the concept of multidimensionality, like the fifth dimension and others. To keep the explanation simple and not overly scientific, because it's easy to get lost in so many theories and few certainties, I call this layer the Asal layer, where it to find the souls of the planet, the consciousness that inhabits the units of consciousness of this planet, or monads of that planet. I refer to this monad of consciousness as what a spiritualist would call a soul. In these journeys, I would fall into the stratosphere of this planet, the outer layer, and initiate conversations and discussions with these souls that inhabited there. These entities showed me many things, and I participated in various discussions with them. I especially remember visiting exoplanets where the people looked very much like us. Something that surprised me in these experiences is that on these other planets I didn't find the ethnic diversity that we have here on Earth. This caught me off guard because on our planet, we have a great variety. Africans, Asians, Europeans, among others. On other planets, it seemed more homogeneous, without the ethnic identity we possess here. This taught me something really important about how our experience on Earth is unique and complex. On one planet, everyone looked like European Caucasians. On another, everyone had dark hair, with no blondes. On another, everyone had brown skin but with triangular-shaped noses like an upside-down bell. These people, in general, didn't like me much because they realized that I was an alien. The civilizations I encountered were extremely advanced and were surprised to see me. I felt intrigued by these societies, which were more advanced than ours and knew my identity. At one point, I met a man in a place that resembled a cafe on their planet. In the fourth dimension, we tend to replicate structures from our planets, like cafes and restaurants. I call it a cafe, but it was more of a community space since they didn't use money. They lived in communities where some cooked one day, and others the next. Everyone shared responsibilities, living communally, similar to what we do in our families. These communities divided tasks so that everyone participated. On one of these occasions, I was talking to a man while people around us consumed something like coffee. I tried to explain that I was from Earth, but he responded arrogantly, saying he already knew. Although they were more evolved than us, they weren't exactly enlightened beings. It's always fascinating to observe the different levels of evolution of these species. It makes me reflect. Oh, I know you. You still use money. He laughed as if I wasn't there. And I remember thinking, yes, I know. We still face wars, hunger, and other challenges. He seemed relaxed, though he showed a bit of arrogance about it. However, there was no malice in his attitude, just a sense of superiority. Yes, we are still at a relatively primitive stage on Earth compared to them. The place was simply wonderful. An incredibly green planet where people lived in perfect harmony with nature. I can say that this civilization had a fifth-dimensional mindset. Some people ask if, to ascend to the fifth dimension, it's necessary to leave our physical bodies. In a way, yes, because the entire consciousness shifts to the fifth dimension. However, when we talk about the ascension of planets, it doesn't mean that Earth will rise to the astral of the fifth dimension. The transformation occurs within us. It is our mindset that evolves to the vibration of the fifth dimension. When planet Earth ascends to the fifth dimension, we will not become just spirits or consciousnesses. We don't need to die physically for this to happen. Our mindset is what will align with the vibration of the fifth dimension. These are concepts like sustainability, communal living, and building a socio-economic paradigm in harmony with the environment. In the fifth dimension, life is parallel, without past, present, or future. In the fourth dimension, there is still some linearity. But in the fifth dimension, time as we know it does not exist. As for the origin of these extraterrestrials, I must admit I am not absolutely sure. However, I feel that I have met their monads of consciousness and their souls, which could place them between the fourth and fifth dimensions. Perhaps I have encountered beings from even higher dimensions, but I wouldn't know exactly which ones because I didn't ask. In some experiences, I could feel very tangibly that I was interacting with truly advanced consciousnesses, developed civilizations, and beings that were probably astral and not physical. These beings would be in the higher dimensions. Interestingly, the number 7 has appeared to me frequently since these experiences, as if someone were sending me information directly. Since 2012, I started having these experiences more intensely, although I had had some before. But not in this way. I am receiving the number 7, which makes me think that some of the beings I contacted, or even the people I talked to, might be from the 7th dimension. I am talking about an extraordinary consciousness, where communication occurs telepathically. In fact, from the 4th dimension, telepathic communication is possible. However, with some types of consciousness, the energy is so different that their vibration is almost hypnotic. I am still assimilating all this, but I am extremely curious, so I keep asking all kinds of questions. Interestingly, I didn't ask what dimension they were from, but when they mentioned Saturn, I thought, Saturn is not inhabited. Instead of allowing them to give me more information, I started questioning intensely. Thinking, wait a minute, Saturn is not inhabited, but maybe you are from another dimension of Saturn. The lady I was talking to smiled as if to say, you got it. They were trying to tell me they were from Saturn, but not from the three-dimensional Saturn, rather from a higher dimension. And again, I received the number 7, which leads me to believe they could be from the 7th dimension. I managed to piece together many parts while narrating these experiences, and I feel it is the spirit, or perhaps my light mentors, transmitting information to me. Since I started having these experiences, when I connect with someone's energy, I obtain detailed information about the person's life. A tradução completa do texto para o inglês person, which sometimes amazes me. This started happening since 2012. Now that I am more accustomed to these experiences and the idea of higher dimensions, the 7th dimension seems to make sense. This specific couple I had contact with introduced me to their son. Upon seeing him, I noticed something very interesting about these people. Their skin was extremely thick, in a way I had never seen in humans. It did not resemble the skin of any ethnicity on Earth. It was so incredibly thick that it looked like marble, and the color also reminded me of marble. But they were not Caucasians like those on Earth. They were white like marble. This impressed me greatly. At one point, I touched one of their arms, and the skin was so thick it seemed unbelievable. They looked very much like humans, but at the same time, they were quite different. There was a noticeable density to their skin, as if there was a degree of density. But at the same time, they were very astral, like dense astral bodies. If I can describe it that way, it is very difficult to find words to describe these experiences and the things I see on the other side. So yes, I have definitely seen beings from higher dimensions. I started my research journey as the researcher I am, and I had to start from the basics. So I not only investigated science, but also began making detailed notes on what quantum physics said about consciousness. I discovered that there is already a specific subfield of quantum physics called the field of consciousness, or science of consciousness, which has been recognized in recent decades. Many people are still unaware of this, but it is a legitimate scientific field today. Additionally, I ventured into New Age philosophy. I had to immerse myself in this investigation, and during my search I found a book called Alchemy of 9 Dimensions by Barbara Adclaw, which was published in the 1990s. I believe the first edition was in 1993. In this work, the author describes 12 dimensions. Barbara, an anthropologist like me, is extremely disciplined and interdisciplinary. I found many similarities between us. In her research, she used astral projection and interviews with shamans and Native American tribes to understand that there are 12 dimensions. Many ancient healers and shamans from various cultures around the world mention the existence of dimensions, usually between 11 and 12. For me, it made sense to read The Alchemy of 9 Dimensions, as Barbara explains that most of us can perceive up to the 9th dimension. The 10th, 11th, and 12th dimensions are described as the dimensions of God, or the Creator, the origin of everything. She describes how each universe has its own creator, and it is fascinating that she uses these terms. There are many universes, I reflect as I read the book, and I realize that quantum physics, through string theory and M-theory, also begins to address the possibility of multiple universes, which we call multidimensionality. Barbara states that each universe has a creator, a source, and there is a source behind each of them, forming a chain that seems endless. I have never explored these issues deeply, and I try to stick to what I have personally experienced, so as not to go completely insane while diving down the rabbit hole. Once you start having these experiences, it is necessary to practice a lot of grounding. While I am connected to the quantum and having all these astral experiences, I need to anchor myself so as not to get lost. What happens after death is that we go to other dimensions before returning to this one. That is the sum total, but it varies from person to person. The destination after death is not simple, and there is definitely a process implemented by the spheres of light and the ascended masters who take care of us. People need to understand that we are not alone on this journey. We could not be here in the density without a team working with us. During my experiences in Hong Kong, I remember feeling lonely. But the spirit wanted to show me that I was not alone. We are surrounded by many experiences and can communicate with other entities and visit other planets. After death, we leave the body, and usually, if we are not in a very dense vibration, we can see members of our astral family around us. Some people, during near-death experiences, describe these beings as angels or deceased relatives who help in the transition to another dimension. In my experience, I realized that we go to many of these astral cities. These cities of light that I visit during my dreams are places where we spend time between lives, for example. Once I visited an astral city that looked like a celestial India, a Mughal India. It was absolutely beautiful and stunning like a celestial India. The physical India seems to be just a projection of this celestial reality. Apparently, we frequently visit this place between lives. You can choose. Go to an astral city of your choice, whether it's a place you already know or a new one, depending on the lesson you need to learn. We are always in a process of learning, both here and beyond. The Christian view suggests that after death we go to heaven or hell, but this is a simplified interpretation. The process is more complex and less dualistic. When Christians speak of heaven, they refer to astral cities of light that are heavenly, beautiful, and peaceful. Upon arriving at these places, you engage in activities to rest from the earthly experience. After all, we all need a break after this journey, right? However, learning also continues. I've discovered that many of these astral cities have places similar to schools, but without rigid schedules. You attend at your own pace, participating in lectures and other activities. These astral colonies are similar to our lives on Earth, but without the density and negativity, as there we are astral bodies. The main difference is the absence of physical weight. There are energy hospitals where you are energetically healed by mentors of light. Some souls have reached a higher level of consciousness and developed healing abilities. These healing souls continue to play their role in the astral realm, just as they do on Earth. I've understood that we can access these astral cities from the 5th dimension, sometimes the 6th or even the 7th, depending on our level of consciousness. Most of these cities are in the 5th dimension because it aligns better with our current level of consciousness, as we are not yet ready for higher dimensions, while living in the 3rd dimension. In these astral regions, we heal, rest, and learn about the future of humanity. In the 5th dimension, time is not linear as we know it here. It's more like a computer cloud where we can access any time period we desire. For example, I can revisit a life I had in the 1500s in Europe, then observe a life I had in the 1800s in Africa, and then a life I had in the 18th century in China as a seer. This is possible because in the 5th dimension we can move forward and backward in time. Having access to all these records, it's quite a strange experience because it's not linear like on Earth. However, seeing the future in the 5th dimension does not mean it is set in stone. In a past life, I was a seer in China, which explains my inexplicable connection to Asia in this life. I lived in a city where I seemed to be the only foreigner, and this attraction to China is due to that past life as a seer. Additionally, I study symbols and Wei Qing, a Chinese divination system, and feel an inexplicable familiarity with them. The seer in me remains present, as I have been reading tarot cards since my 20s, long before I knew about this past life. I was also a scientist and neo-terrorist in past lives, which leads me to seek a balance between these experiences in the current life. The truth lies in the union of these two facets. The seer in me tells me that the future is not predetermined. Any divination system, whether tarot or another, teaches us that the future is not fixed because it depends on our free will. If you decide to do something today, even if you didn't plan it yesterday, you will inevitably alter your future. This change is that simple. When we consult fortune tellers like tarot readers and ask about the future, such as whether we will get married, we often receive this question. A serious tarot reader, for example, will approach the question pragmatically by saying, "Let's read for the next year and see if you will meet someone." This is because one cannot predict the rest of life, as the future is not set in stone. However, the near future can be guessed with some accuracy. As long as nothing is done to change it, a true card reader will talk to you in this way. A serious fortune teller will use a specific time frame, Whether it's an oracle, bones, coffee cups, or tarot cards, these oracles contain truths, as I could perceive from the other side. When dealing with tarot cards, bones, or coffee cups, there is a pattern of energy at play. Your spiritual guides manipulate this energy so that you draw the right card, revealing what will happen in the next 6 months or the next year. Thus, the future depends on your free will. In my future visions, I see the planet ascending to the 5th dimension, becoming a regenerated body. Earth as a planet in the process of regeneration, recovering from past events. In several of my future lives, the population has significantly reduced. This happens because lower vibration souls will be removed and will no longer be able to reincarnate here, as they will not be incarnate. Tuning into the frequency of a regenerated and elevated planet, these souls will need to continue their dense third-dimensional experiences elsewhere. This is a topic for another video, but that's why Earth's population will substantially decrease in the future. Only souls compatible with the 5th dimension will remain. I asked the spirit why I see the planet almost as if it's starting over, with new societies emerging so distinctly. I envision a planet focused on science and technology, with humans in the future dedicated to science, technology, arts, culture, and music. First, science and technology, followed by the arts and the creation of new architectures. I see people developing new types of architecture. Sustainable societies committed to creating and innovating. In the coming years, we will witness great scientific advances. Science will provide us with impressive discoveries. String theory, for example, will be proven, just as Einstein's gravitational waves were verified a few years ago. I asked the spirit if we are recovering from some nuclear disaster. What I received was a strong possibility of a small nuclear incident with some population displacement. I saw people migrating from Europe to South America. Although a nuclear incident is concerning, even if small, humanity will survive. We are as resilient as cockroaches and will always find ways to regenerate and learn. This possible incident can be avoided, depending on the decisions made by world leaders. In all my future lives, the planet has recovered and regenerated. If it's necessary to go through this to evolve as a society, so be it. Although I see this event as avoidable, smaller conflicts may occur in the coming years. However, a major world war does not seem likely. Humanity has already learned that lesson. My message is that we are in transition. This is the ultimate transition, what many religious texts call the apocalypse. The bad news is that we are experiencing the apocalypse. The good news is that it's not the end of everything, but the end and the beginning of the new. The old must crumble to make way for the new. We have an important role, being at the epicenter of this transition. Despite the difficulties, believe that what we are doing now is expanding our consciousness, even if it seems like just surviving and paying bills. If you are watching videos like this, you are working to expand your consciousness. So what did you think of this incredible story? Leave your opinion in the comments. Consider supporting our work by donating any amount. The Pix key is in the video description. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell to be notified of each new video. Let's bring hope to more people that there is life beyond what the eyes can see.